All right, well, welcome everybody. We're live on YouTube now, so we'll go ahead and get started. We're going to drop into the chat the attendance sheet for today. Again, it's voluntary attendance records. We like, though, to keep those on hand. So a couple of ways to participate and engage in the presentation. Feel free to rename yourself. Feel free to use the chat. We have some Jamboards that we're going to open up later on in order to try to make this as engaging as possible for this particular workshop. So a little bit here about what we're going to do today. So with respect to the agenda, we're going to talk a little bit about the self-assessment. We're going to do some discussion of resources, and then I will end with a Q&A. So we have a few activities that hopefully you can take with you. It's a dashboard activity that comes out of designing your life, where we're going to talk through work view and life view and the importance of those. And then we're going to do one of my favorite activities, which is the 3 U's of the multiverse. All right, so a couple of things here. When we think about career exploration, especially early on in our career, at any moment in your career, really what we're talking about here is an iterative loop, right? So career exploration is something that you really want to think about early on in your career, as a graduate student, and also throughout your career as well. And the importance that career exploration sort of plays is that it allows you to kind of assess your values. You know, when we go to this next slide, it allows you to assess your values and interests and how they align with your skills and your personality for you to find the sort of ideal job. So I'm going to back up just a little bit to talk through the value of career exploration in terms of our goals. Some other goals we have here for the workshop are a critical self-awareness, the role that plays in career exploration and planning. And then our outcomes, what we're going to leave here with today are you're going to be able to complete some of these activities, these reflection activities, and you're also going to be able to continue your career exploration and career wellness, or thinking about it, that is. So again, what we're going to focus on here, and this is our sort of Venn diagram that I like to use to talk about finding your ideal job. So skills, when we look at like skills, they're resources that we can share out with you about individual development plans and different assessment tools to sort of think about what skills you have. And then your personality, we here at NC State, we use Clifton Strengths. And so we use that tool and system to sort of help us learn more about our personalities and then or our ways of doing things and our talents. Today, I want to focus on kind of values and interests here. So we have a dashboard activity and a work view and worldview activity that are going to help you sort of assess your values and how they might be an important part of finding this ideal job. And then we have the 3 U's, which is going to work more or less off of your sort of like interests. So where to begin? So I used to be a literature professor. So we have a John Donne quote. So be thine own home and in thyself dwell in anywhere. And so part of what Donne is sort of offering here in this poem is, in this brief line, is thinking about sort of a self-reflection and being at home in oneself. So the first activity that I'd like you all to do, and if you have a sheet of paper, that will be super helpful at this time. So if you have a sheet of paper, a scrap paper, go ahead and take it out or open up a Google Doc, whatever works best for you. So we're going to do this dashboard activity, and this all comes from designing your life, how to build a well-lived, joyful life. So I'm going to walk you through basically these authors, how they design this dashboard. And it's really a resource and a tool that lets you think about where you're at now so that you can kind of orienteer yourself of where you're heading in these particular areas of work, play, love, and health. And so the goal here is for you to fill in your dashboard in terms of like a kind of a fuel gauge, if you will. I kind of adapt the activity whenever I do this, and I use five. You see like 4 bars here. I use five, sort of like a 1 to 5 scale where my work, play, love, and health are. But what we're going to do is try to figure out and reflect a little bit on where we are today in terms of our work, play, love, and health. And I'll explain what each of these definitions, each of these categories are. All right, so thinking about work here, what we're really talking about when we're talking about work is focusing on the do. Work doesn't have to be reduced here in terms of simply what you get paid for. Work can be more than what you get paid for. It's how you spend your time. Um, so, with that in mind, think about sort of where's your work today. So, if you have that scrap piece of paper or that Google Doc, where's your work today? Focusing on the do and what it is that you sort of what it is that you're doing and that you enjoy doing. Our next one, then, so I'll give you all a moment to sort of fill that in. Our next category is play. So when we think about play and this particular component of our gauge or our dashboard, we're really talking about what brings you excitement and energy. So I like to think of this as like, what do you do for like pure joy? So I often I train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and I do that for competition. Like I do compete, but it really brings me pure joy just to do jujitsu. Even when I'm not training for like a competition, I really just enjoy it. So, what brings you? What do you get excited about? What brings you excitement and energy? This is sort of how we're defining play. And what do you do for pure joy of it? What brings you that pure joy, and how much of that do you have right now? All right, so I'm not going to get really philosophical here with our definition of love, but the way that the authors understand it is that it's the kind of affection, friendship, romantic, but really love. What we're thinking about here is who are those people in your life that love flows from and to. So where's your love sort of meter at in your dashboard? And then health. So, what we're thinking about here when we talk about health, obviously, we're thinking emotional, mental, and physical. And I think, we should recognize that this year's been super stressful. Even coming out of the summer, I think that things are still stressful. There's still some anxiety around returning. So, think about, where is your health here right now? So feel free. I'm gonna give you. I will go camera silent here for 3 minutes or so, and I'll roll back to the very beginning slide of the dashboard and leave that up. But I want to give you a sense. Again, the overall goal here is to reflect on where you are in each of those categories and to give yourself a kind of metered gauge of like 1 to 5, 1 to 4, whatever those are. Good. So I see a lot of you responding in the chat. Thanks so much for sharing. Um, so the goal of this activity and this sort of tool is for you to, you know, take this with you outside of job search strategies and think about, you don't know where you're heading, especially in terms of like what jobs and what positions you want to maybe explore or you want to start to apply for. You really don't know where you're heading, or you can't have a good sense of, where those are without knowing where you're at right now. And by that, what I mean is, if our dashboard is constantly going to be changing. Sometimes, if you're at the end of your dissertation, and you're just finishing up and you're getting ready for the defense, I'm going to say probably that work is really high and there might be not so much play. Um, but what I want you to sort of think about in using this tool is that this allows you to sort of think through and gauge where you're at, so that you can understand, as you would maybe work on doing like an informational interview or exploring particular roles that you find interesting, thinking about, what's the work, what would my life be like in those moments in that role? And do you want a job where maybe you would have some more free time, or that you would have some play, and how to work that into your life? Even when work is at a four, how do we keep play at a four? Or how do we keep play at a five? So that's kind of the goal of this activity. All right, so this one is a little bit more writing intensive, but it's also a reflection activity. So this activity is to get you to think about the sort of interconnection between your work view and your life view. So I'm going to define what work view is and what life view is. And I want you to sort of think about how they compare and contrast, if there are any trade-offs, what are their sort of like connections. All right, so with respect to work, when we define our work view, what I'm thinking about here is, like, why work? What's work for? What does work mean for you? Think about how work relates to others, society, and community. Is that important to you? What defines meaningful work for you? And where does money fit into your understanding of work? Um, and what and where do you experience growth and fulfillment? And how does that fit into your definition of work? So I'm sort of thinking broadly here about why it is that we work and what your sort of like definition of work is. And that's how we're understanding or grounding our understanding of our work view. So think about how work relates to others, society, community, etc. And then our life view, the way that we are defining this is the sort of ultimate concerns of things, right? How do these things impact your life? So, why are we here? What's the purpose of life? What is the role that justice plays in your life? Where does community fit in? Is there a higher power that's important to you in terms of your life view? And so those are how we're defining work view and life view. And then this is what I'd like you to do for the activity. So think about your work view, think about your life view. And if you have to, you can write a few notes on like your work view. This is what I think. This is what I find to be meaningful work. This is what the role that I think community plays in it. This is what I get excited about doing. And you can then do that same thing for your life view. And then what I'd like you to do in the activity is to evaluate and measure your life and work view. So where do they complement each other? Where do they contrast? And what kinds of trade-offs are there when you're looking at your work view and your life view? So I'm going to give you 5 minutes, 5 to 7 minutes to go ahead and write some of this down and to complete this activity, and then we'll share again back in the chat. All right, so I'm going to go camera off, and if you have any questions, I'm going to go to the chat to monitor those. This is great. I'm really enjoying reading the chat. Thanks so much for sharing, everybody. So the kind of goal here for this particular activity is to, again, all of these activities are to sort of thinking about them as a cartographic map, or a cartographic metaphor that is like the sort of orienteering. So these are the way that I kind of try to think about these tools, are that they allow you to evaluate and take a personal self inventory to help you design your life. So to help you sort of think about, how are my work view and life view, how are they complementary? How are they How do they contrast? And what are the trade-offs? And as I move forward and I explore companies, thinking about what companies and what roles I might want to work for, how can I do some research and sort of figure out where my work view and life view might align, in order to find that ideal position with the company that best suits you or is a good fit. So we have one more activity, and this is probably my favorite activity that I like to do because it gets you to sort of think through, to be imaginative, and to sort of think about um, three different yous. So this one, you're again another scrap piece of paper or whatever you're using. So the first you, in this activity of the multiverses of your life, this is the sort of current timeline. So in your current timeline, what is in 3 to 5 years? What's the future you doing? So current timeline, 3 to 5 years, write down what it is that you're doing. All right, so the second timeline, this is the alternative timeline. Robots have taken your job. Um, what's the future you doing now? So you can't do what you were planning on doing in 3 to 5 years. Um, robots have taken over. They've taken that job. What is the future you doing now? So first timeline, 3 to 5 years, current plan. Second timeline, totally different. Robots are doing that job now. You've got to come up with something else. What's the future you doing now? I got a question in the chat. I got to say, I've never got this question, but it's an exciting one and very imaginative. I like it. If robots took my job, do I still need to find something else to make money? In timeline two, you still have to make money. We're not quite at the timeline where you don't have to. So third timeline. Um, so the third timeline is the bold timeline. This is the timeline where money's no object, no one's judging you. What would the you of this timeline be doing? So money's no object, no one's judging you. What's the sort of this is your, the really bold timeline. Like what would you do if money wasn't an object, no one was judging you? What would you be doing? These are great. I like reading these, so please put them in the chat. I really like seeing the three different views whenever I do this activity. All right, so we've got a couple different ways to share these. Feel free to continue to share them in the chat. We also have a jam board that we created. So Morgan, Morgan Dowman, the program assistant here at A to I NC State, is going to drop the Jamboard link into the session. So a couple of things here, just things to know about Jamboards in case you haven't used them. Over on the left-hand side, you'll see a little tool menu. And if you click on the sticky note, that'll let you add your note. And then on there, you can add in your sticky note, you can add your three U's. And then the sort of other component to this activity is I'd like you to think a little bit about whether there are any like common themes that run throughout your 3 U's. So quite often when I do this activity, I notice, so an example, my first timeline is sort of continuing to direct A to I, but A to I is continuing to grow and we've got more academic partners, more industry partners. My sort of other one is that I'm, you know, the robots are doing that now. They're directing A to I. Uh, the next one is, I would go back and maybe I would go back to the faculty side of things and maybe teach or work, more in like learning development or something like that. And then the third one is like teaching Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So part of what I see when I look at like all of my 3 U's whenever I do this activity, and it always changes a little bit, I always see that the theme that emerges is that I really value working with people and supporting people, and I enjoy teaching. Like the way that I enjoy doing that is through teaching and through working with different groups to support them and their goals. So that's kind of what we're looking for here in the 3 U's. So feel free to use the Jamboard. What is your first, second, and third U doing? And then are there any common themes that you see running throughout? So I'm going to give you 5 minutes. All right. Thanks, everyone. I really these answers are great. Some of you are very some of you have great imaginations. So it's great reading these. And again, apologies. We are new to Jamboards and we're just trying it out. We did not realize that Jamboards have a capacity. So apologies, but feel free to check back. And like I said, we will share out this presentation. So you'll have all of these embedded links and things where you can go back in and share and take a look at what others have written and things as well. So the point though of this like 3 U's activity is that one, there's a lot of different ways that you can be happy, right? That there's 3 different jobs, there's 3 different U's out there that could possibly be living a very happy life. And two, that those other jobs or those other roles that you sort of imagine, those other things, somebody out there is doing that. And that leads us to this, the end of our sort of presentation here in terms of career exploration and career wellness. And that's to think about doing an informational interview. And we're going to talk some more about informational interviews throughout A to I's job search strategies, specifically LinkedIn, that LinkedIn workshop. They're going to come and they're going to show you all how to use the alumni tool in order to set up informational interviews. But I just wanted to sort of underscore them here at the beginning to say that informational interviews are really important in terms of like career exploration. And the role that they really serve is for you to get a sense of different roles and different positions and what the day-to-day is really like in those roles and in those positions. So, everyone's read and job advertisements, but it's really hard to understand the differences and the nuances of what a person's day-to-day looks like. But that person, whoever is scientist one at, corporation X, meeting with them and having a cup of coffee for 15 or 20 minutes and asking questions about what their day-to-day looks like can really help you understand what scientist one at corporation X is really like. And so informational interviews are a really great way of doing this, of doing sort of career research in this important part of career exploration. So for all of our NC State students, we have a informational interview tool that we have here on campus and that we've put together and we'll share out. For all of our partner schools, as I mentioned, we have a LinkedIn talk that we're going to, a workshop that's going to show you how to do informational interviews and how to sort of use the alumni tools in LinkedIn to do that. And then there's also career services and professional development folks at your institution who I'm sure would be happy to sort of arrange for and make introductions for you and set up these informational interviews. So there's a couple of next steps, and we'll share this out. So a couple of next steps uh, with respect to thinking about your career and sort of where you're going to explore, thinking about whether or not there's any like geographical boundaries at all. So I've got an RTP company directory listed here. So if anyone's interested in the RTP area, the next talk we're going to hear from SC Bio, and South Carolina Bio is going to come and talk about sort of what companies and what industries are available there in South Carolina. There are all of these resources. I'm sure with a little bit of research that there's some organization that does this type of work in your home state if you are sort of like geographically bound. Uh, and then we have some more resources here. The other thing I'll say is make sure that you sign up for our job search strategies LinkedIn group. Not only do we, post job ads and things in there, but that's also a really great way to network. It's a really great way to sort of look people up and to ask questions, about particular roles that they might have or about a company that you might be interested in. So with that, I want to thank you, and we'll take questions now. I'm happy to take any questions now. So thanks so much, everyone. Take care and have a great rest of your afternoon or wherever you're at. Great rest of your day.